Thanks for coming on to Patch High School News. Thanks for sharing your experiences with us in your school newspaper and what you guys want to end up doing in the future. It's just really cool to have you guys here. I check all the sites every day because it's really interesting to just see, A, you know, what's being talked about at kind of the high school level. B, like, I'm actually interested in what you guys, certainly like that, the story about for East Haven, for instance, like the ice rink reopening, it's just such good local like information that I don't even live in East Haven, like I was saying earlier, but I still am reading this stuff like I do. I'm interested in it, and it's really cool to see. Plus, I just love seeing student journalists kind of flourish, learn, just like professional journalists do every day, and it's really cool. So I started working at a newspaper when I was in high school at my local city paper, the Everett Leader Herald News Gazette, up in Everett, Massachusetts. And from there, I just went to I went to a nonprofit summer course called the New England High School Journalism Collaborative, and I learned a lot of skills there, where I was able to kind of parlay it into working at the Boston Globe for 8 years and in the sports department mostly, and then the last 6 years at Patch and kind of covering local municipal stuff, especially here in Melrose, Massachusetts, where I live now. And that was kind of my first real beat. I was on the sports desk at the Globe, but I wasn't covering a beat like I have in the last 6 years. And I'll kind of explain to you guys, you know, covering a beat, owning a beat, the difference between it, how to do it well, why it's important, some things to look out for. And I'll kind of go a bit quickly because it just for the benefit of the audience here. But you guys can certainly always check it out at your own leisure. So today we're just going to learn, like I just said, the difference between covering and owning a beat, why they're important, the need to stay informed and connected, the expectations of a great beat reporter, and some hazards to avoid. So I won't probably read everything word for word here. I'll leave that to you guys. But you know, a lot of people cover beats. A few people own beats. The people who own the beats are the ones you might recognize on Twitter. The people who you might follow on, you know, social media for big national beats, or for, you know, or for I know we're bringing someone on here. I think I just want to make sure I did that right.
Yeah, two of my lovely other students who are returning reporters. Hi, Mirta. Hi, Chow.
Hey guys, thanks for
weren't expecting to talk back. That's okay.
Oh no, that's fine. No, thank you guys for coming on. I just threw my screen here for a loop. So beat reporting, you know, is really one of the most challenging and demanding jobs in journalism, but it's certainly one of the most rewarding because you, as a beat reporter, become an expert on whatever you're reporting about. And so folks will go to you when they want information on whatever it is they're interested in. Likewise, when people want to get information out there, people in your field, they're going to go to you because they know people listen to you. They know that you're an authority on the subject. It's not an ego thing, but there's something really cool about being an expert in your field, or the go-to source for, you know, whatever it might be that you're covering, especially if you like what you're covering, if you're interested in what you're covering. A really good beat reporter, you know, you're not just restricted to kind of the day-to-day grind of reporting the news every day. Sometimes you get a really great scoop. You get to sometimes really comment on and analyze what's going on in your beat. You get to have a little bit more leeway sometimes in kind of telling people, here's what to look out for, here's why it's happening. And that's really important as a journalist to learn those skills. Beat reporting, you can kind of cultivate all your skills as a journalist. You can really win as it says here, the respect and the attention of your readers and your colleagues and the folks who are working in that field. Beats are important. Beats are important for journalists to learn more about a specific topic than you ever would otherwise. You get to sharpen, as I mentioned, all the skills in your toolbox: interviewing, relationship building, research, deadline writing, maybe longer writing, just the information exchange, which is such an important part of being a successful journalist. And you can earn some significant exposure when other outlets, including major TV networks, might want to talk about the story that you're covering. You know, I was able to be on a few TV shows. I know some past reporters have been able to be on a few TV shows, even though we just cover individual communities. I'm in Melrose, Massachusetts, which is about 29,000 people. But you know, my stuff's been featured on major national networks that reach, you know, hundreds of thousands and millions of people, because these major organizations, they're not nimble enough to cover, you know, an individual kind of a granular beat. But you are, and you're able to kind of be the go-to source of that major information, which is really cool. For a newspaper, beat reporting allows that paper to have an authoritative voice in matters of public interest. So it helps to kind of grow its own expert at the paper. And it helps for easier editorial decision making, like story assignments, and it helps it helps avoid reporters kind of chasing the same story because there's some structure to it. Now, at a school newspaper, beat reporting isn't all that common because just the nature of the school newspapers, where it's a bit more infrequent, the story rate, and it's more just kind of scattershot in the sense of staffing. It's not, there's no real staff to it. It's just the folks who want to write for the school newspaper, and they're kind of in and they're out sometimes, and so it's hard to really establish specific beat reporters. What I'm going to talk to you guys about, hopefully you can put to practice at your school newspaper if you end up covering a beat, or beyond at your college newspaper, maybe at a job, maybe a professional job, and you can kind of market yourself as a beat reporter. You'll have some kind of idea about how to tackle that, what that means. And also, beat reporters, they're all around by different names, and I don't want to devalue being a professional beat reporter, but there are certainly people who have maybe a Substack or different blogs, and for all intents and purposes, these people are beat reporters. I mean, they find a niche that they're interested in, that a million other people are interested in also, and they become an authoritative voice on that. So some things to know about beat reporting. There's not just beat reporters at a newspaper, although they are kind of the lifeblood of a local paper. Beat reporters are usually working on very tight deadlines. They write more often than their colleagues. They're probably writing day to day. They're at all the meetings. They're talking they're doing a lot of the dirty work, and they're the first to report the news in their subject areas. But the big scoop, sometimes they might go to someone who swoops in, who's able to take a longer approach to a story, because you're needed every day to write a story every day, and it might be hard to zoom out sometimes and to really give a comprehensive look at what's going on. But those big scoops aren't possible without the information that you're getting as a beat reporter. And sometimes that big scoop is something that just kind of lands right in your door, which is really cool. So what kind of beats are there? Anything can be a beat. Almost anything can be a beat. And almost anything can be broken down into a more granular beat. For instance, like a local paper, a small local paper might have a sports beat, and that sports person might just cover, the girls' soccer match and the boys' track meet and a bunch of different things. But a large paper might have people covering individual sports. And for kind of an example, I almost took a job in Cleveland once for Cleveland.com. And they were interviewing me for the Cavaliers beat, Cleveland Cavaliers, the NBA team. And that ended up becoming, they had another beat that branched off. That was just the LeBron James beat. All you did was cover LeBron James. So there was a beat just for LeBron James. I didn't end up taking the job, but pretty interesting that, one person can justify an entire salary and all the attention and of a dedicated beat reporter. But it can be almost anything you like. I mean, sports, government, tech and gaming, religion, food, arts and entertainment, business, crime. These are all really popular beats that you'll find in a lot of local papers. But if you're interested in something, there's a beat out there for you. I mean, think about what you like to learn about or talk about or watch on TV or listen to on podcasts now. Think about where you get that information from. It's likely someone who is in some way, shape, or form a beat reporter. It might not be at a local paper necessarily. Like I said earlier, it might be someone who's just strictly online and send out a newsletter or a Substack or something like that. Or maybe they have just a podcast, and that's kind of how they do their craft. But if you're interested in something, which you are, there's an avenue for you to become an expert at it. And what I consider to be a beat reporter, again, whether or not you're at technically a paper or a website or what. So if you are to start a beat, especially in the high school level, pick your beat. It might not be something that you're already an expert at, but you should probably have at least like a basic knowledge of what you're going to talk about and a basic interest in what you're going to talk about and report on. Otherwise, you'll get kind of maybe bored or maybe overwhelmed pretty quickly. It's nice to have some basic level of interest and knowledge going in, but it's not necessary. If you really like a challenge, throw yourself in the deep end and start a really wacky beat. Define your beat. So this is when you work with your editor, maybe in your case, your school advisor, on narrowing the scope of what you're covering. Typically, the quality of your coverage will increase the more zoomed into a topic you are. but you also have to a broad enough appeal or broad enough topic to appeal to all your readers. And so, for instance, if you really like popcorn, I might say, hey, why don't you become a beat reporter on movie snacks as opposed to popcorn kernels, which are probably less interesting to people. You might be able to kind of reach out to a lot more folks just doing movie theater snacks as opposed to just popcorn kernels. But you want to make sure that you're focused enough to really provide some value to the reader too. I wouldn't use the popcorn movie theater analogy. I wouldn't put that one in my Hall of Fame reel, but it's what I went with. So you also want to start living your beat. You want to read what you can. You want to know who else is reporting on it. You want to know who the major players are in your field. You want to learn the laws around it. You want to start cold calling people using social media, introduce yourself, get into your beat physically as much as possible. So if I'm a beat reporter for a community, I need to be in that community. If I'm a beat reporter for the ice hockey team, I need to go to those games and talk to people. If I'm a beat reporter in the health and sciences field, I need to get in front of some of these people, talk to them, get into a lab, get into whatever it might be, and I need to show them that I'm serious about it, that I'm doing my best to learn, and because these people you're going to be working with, they're really experts in the field. You're going to become experts by talking to these people and by listening to them. So you need to develop relationships with them. You need to show them that you're serious about it, and you need to be able to talk authoritatively about what you're covering. No way you can be a beat reporter without developing sources. It's the most important thing for really any professional journalist. Specifically beat reporting, you're only as good as your sources. I would argue that it's probably the number one thing that makes a beat reporter a beat reporter. It's the most important part of your job because you are not going to know anything about what you're covering if you're not talking to people constantly, if you're not getting information out there, and if you're not taking information in to kind of cycle it out there, but also if people aren't coming to you because they know that you're talking to folks in the know. So you want to develop sources, and that a whole nother topic is how to develop sources and all that. But you can see here some examples, but whatever beat you have. So I'll take football, for instance, you'll want to know the athletic director or a player, an assistant coach. You'll want to get someone who you can trust and who more importantly can trust, well, not more importantly, but just as importantly, trust you, because they're going to be giving you sensitive information. Maybe they might give you a perspective that you're not privy to otherwise. And so you want to be able to make sure there's a great relationship of trust there. Staying informed. This is, the best way to become a better writer, a better reporter is by reading. Really better anything in journalism is by reading, because so much of this is knowledge, and again, it's information exchange. You need to become an expert on what you're doing. So you have to read other reporters' work. You have to read trade magazines and press releases and anything available in your beat. You need to have Google alerts on it, or you need to set up an RSS feed or something, that might be more appetizing to how you consume news, maybe a Twitter list or maybe whatever it might be. And if you have a competitive beat, what other reporters are working on, you need to, you got to talk, you got to read what they're writing too, because they have their own sources and they're hearing their own information, and you need to know what's happening in that beat so you can stay informed on it. You also have to stay connected. So I had mentioned it, so I'll fly past this real quick, but I had mentioned RSS feeds, Twitter lists, whatever it might be. You need to make sure that you're getting information kind of passively. When I say passively, I mean you don't want to have to log on to 15 different websites every day to see what people are talking about in your beat. You don't have to read 20 newsletters every day. You want to set up and customize kind of your own information feeds, which I'm sure you guys are pretty good at anyways. Even if you don't know that you're already doing it, you're probably already doing it, or Facebook's doing it for you, or someone's kind of some algorithm knows what you like to look at and how you like to receive it. But really take charge of that, and take charge of how you can kind of take information in. Twitter, I don't know where Twitter is in the current high school demographic. I don't know. It's probably not. I'm getting one of these, so I don't know if it's super popular. But if you're going to do this professionally, if you're going to be really in the business for a professional paper, for a local paper, a big paper, a magazine, whatever it might be, you have to have a Twitter, at least, if not a Twitter presence. People need to know that you need to be on there to again, intake information, but also to give it out also, and to let people know, like sometimes people really like to feel like they're getting like an inside scoop. And if you tweet something in advance of a story that you're going to write, or maybe you tweet a nugget of your story or something like that, people are going to, or if you comment on a debate that's going on, if you're a politics reporter, you're commenting, you're giving a little bit of analysis on a debate. That's just what people really love. They feel like they know you a little bit, they can connect with you a little bit. You're not just a byline to them, at least you're a little avatar, which I think is a step up from a byline. And they can connect with you, they can talk with you, they can yell at you, unfortunately. So you always want to take precautions to kind of protect yourself and to be responsible with your social media habits, especially when you're a professional reporter. Or if you ever want to be a professional reporter, you don't want like digital footprint stuff kind of hanging around and lingering over you. But you want to, be able to have good conversations with people. And I think Twitter is a really great way to do that. If you guys know of any other ways to do that, I'd love to hear it at the end of this, because social media, whatever form it might take where you are in your demographic, you really want to be able to take advantage of it because it's all information exchange. Oops. Don't forget who you're reporting for. So, you're a beat reporter, you're trying to please your source to an extent. You're trying to not piss off your source, at least, because you want them to stay your source. But you're writing for your readers. You're writing for people who rely on you every day for fair and clear and impartial information. So any information you get fairly, that's appropriate and important and interesting to your readers, you shouldn't be withholding it just to satisfy a source. You shouldn't be working with a source to make them look better or someone else look worse. You're not taking sides when you're doing this. And that can obviously be applied to all levels of journalism. But you just have to remember that you're writing for people who are relying on you to be an expert, but also to break down that expert knowledge to them on a level that they can understand. So everything that you write, you want it to be digestible. You don't want to be wrapped up in all this kind of jargon of whatever industry you're covering, whatever topic or beat you're reporting on. Just because now you know what all these fancy words mean and all these all this different stuff might mean, your reader probably doesn't. You always want to kind of break it down as simple as possible, which doesn't mean being boring. It just means being digestible and approachable for your readers. So your biggest duty is always to your readers, not to your sources, and it's really not even to your bosses as much as it is to your reader. Also, don't forget that you want to do right by yourself too and your own reputation. I'm going to take one sip of water here. So really one of the biggest pieces of being a great beat reporter, really owning your beat, is being relentless. You break a big piece of news, awesome, that's great. That's just the beginning of it. I mean, you think about all the great news, all the big news stories, think about what's happening right now that you guys may be paying attention to, that you guys are watching. Think about when that story just started. Think about the genesis of that story and think about the follow-up. Think about what's happening with Kanye West right now, maybe, or just how the stories evolve and continue to go and go and go. And they're not just going out of the thin air, out of the blue. They're going because reporters are talking to people about what happened behind the scenes. How did this come to be? Who's involved? What were the circumstances leading up to it? Who's going to be impacted? I mean, these are your next steps to tackle and kind of follow on these. We call them follow stories. You gotta follow on the news that you're breaking. It's not enough to just say, hey, I got the story. Okay, I'm going to let it, kind of simmer over here. You have to beat it into the ground so that people have no shortage of they're going to want to know more. They're always going to want to know more. So it's kind of your job to let them know more. I'll read this part verbatim because I think it's really important. Now, you have to remember, readers can always or often get the initial information from your competitors. You guys maybe all cover the same school committee meeting, for instance, so you all have the same news. That's great, but it's your commitment to peeling back the layers of that story that's going to set you apart as an expert beat reporter. How willing are you to go to talk to people, to ask questions, to pull reports, to make requests for information? How willing are you to go to do that? That's going to separate what your competitors or your colleagues are doing from what you're doing. Because even though you guys both cover the same school committee meeting, the next day's story, y'all may have the same story. The next week's story, you might have the one that really cracks the case open or really lets people know something that they really wanted to know. So these are some hazards here. Beat reporting isn't infallible. Journalism isn't infallible. Even well-intentioned beat reporters can kind of go off the path here. When you're one person covering one topic for a long time, it leaves you vulnerable to a couple things. I'm going to touch on these things real quick. If you guys hear my baby crying in the background, it's bedtime. So comfort. So don't get too cozy with your sources to the point where they're like manipulating you and using you. I mentioned this earlier. You're not reporting for them. You're reporting for yourself. I mean, I'm sorry, for your readers, and again, to an extent, to yourself as far as your own reputation. You want to stay fiercely independent. You don't want to get too comfortable with people you're working with on a day-to-day basis or talking to on a day-to-day basis. There needs to be some kind of really clear and appropriate line, and they need to know that you're performing a duty, a serious kind of civil obligation here by reporting the news. Conflict. Do not get too antagonistic with your sources. Sometimes there might be people who are mad at you. You might be mad at them. You might disagree with them. They might disagree with the way you presented the news. You got to find ways to work with them, because if you burn a bridge unnecessarily, you lose trust with them. You lose trust with your readers, and it's going to make your job difficult. And the smaller your beat is, or the smaller your community is. Again, for instance, I live in Melrose, Mass. If the police chief's really mad at me, which he was, I got cut off from the police chief, and I'm at a disadvantage for getting police information because, while I think I was in the right of what I was doing, I wasn't careful enough to avoid conflict. And if the mayor ever got mad at me, what would I do? If he didn't want to talk to me and he refused to give me information, how would I inform the community? Because there's only one mayor, there's only one police chief. It's a small city. So you always need to remember you're working with these people, but you're not for or against them necessarily, if that makes sense. Underrepresentation. You're one person covering a lot of real estate, so that's inherently going to mean a lack of diversity. No matter what, no matter how diverse you might identify as a person, you're still just one viewpoint. So you're always looking for ways to expand that viewpoint. You always want to consider different voices. There was an incident where there was some really high racial tension in Melrose that I covered a couple of years ago, and I realized, man, I'm writing about the story. I've been writing a number of stories on it, and I'm getting information out there to people. But you know what? It's just me talking about it. And as you can see, I don't know if everyone's going to have a video when they're listening to this, if they listen to it, but I'm very white, and it was a kind of a racial incident involving a couple, probably like, I think it was like 2 or 3 Black men, and I had to open up my platform and invite people to come on and post their own stories, post kind of first person viewpoints from where they stood, who identified differently than I did, or racially differently than me, because it was doing them and it was doing the story a disservice by just hearing my perspective. Now, it's not always racial underrepresentation. It can be a number of different things. You just want to be aware that you're just one person reporting on a lot of real estate. And advocacy. So, this one's tough too. I mean, a lot of people feel really strongly, and maybe they feel really strongly about certain things in their beat or about their beat, and they feel like, you know what, I'm doing the right thing here by advocating for who I feel is in the right, or whatever it might be. It's easy to empathize and connect with your beat and the topics. Yet your role isn't to advocate. And sometimes that stinks. Sometimes it kind of feels like, man, it's something I want to say. I feel like I can make a change. Well, you can make a change. If you do your job and you're truthful and you get the stories out there, your stories will bring the necessary change. The best kind of change agent is the truth and is transparency. So if you want to make a change, don't advocate for it. Just do your job. We're coming up to the very end here, but this is what the pros are saying. I kind of put out on Twitter, what do you guys think? What would you tell an aspiring reporter, aspiring beat reporter on how to own a beat? Like, what should they keep in mind in one sentence or one tweet's worth of information here? So we have some folks here from ESPN and some local CBS reporters from my neck of the woods, and a few patch reporters here. I want to, they're just tweets, so if you'll allow me to just run through them very quickly, and then we'll wrap up here. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to hear them. Kara Seymour, who's editor-in-chief of Patch, tell the stories no one else does. Lead, don't follow. Be accurate, be fair, have fun with it. Don't take yourself too seriously. Brendan Hall, who was at ESPN at the time, I think, relationships matter and nothing beats in-person conversation. I really have to highlight that. I mean, there's nothing more important than talking to someone and letting them know that they can trust you. Pick up the phone, go to the meeting, sit up front, introduce yourself, be kind, be accurate. Again, these are all ways to win trust and win information, which will help you get some leverage in your information gathering. Stay in one place long enough that people learn to trust you. Treat interviews like conversations, not transactions. Ask how they're doing, ask if there's anything new that you should know. Again, this is a lot of just question asking, and it's really relationship building. And that dovetails into Jeff Arnold here, establish relationships and trust so that those you cover know that you're reliable enough with any information that allows you to get the information you need no matter the subject. Emily Rahal from BAT, she's on this call right now, says consistency is key. Always be available, be easily accessible, be friendly, be easy to work with while still holding boundaries, which we had talked about earlier, and it's very important. Be curious, always ask questions, and always show respect for people's time. Then Karen Riegel here at WBZ CBS affiliate, be seen, relationships matter. I have contacts from Worcester I still call on. I started that job in 1999. Treat good contacts like gold, but know when to burn a bridge. Don't carry the matches on you, which I thought was really cool. If you're going to take away 4 or 5 things from this, which I hope you guys do, whether you're a beat reporter at your school newspaper in the future, or just can kind of benefit from these skills no matter what you end up doing, you can cover a beat or you can own it. The latter is a real grind, but it is one well worth it. Beat reporting is about obtaining information, and the best information comes from trusted sources, so make relationships. Narrow focus can lead to deeper coverage. Find an appropriate level of focus with your editor. Become and remain an expert on the subject. Read all you can and never stop learning about it. And you're reporting for the public, not your sources. So stay true to yourself and stay true to the readers.